I'm Kevin Slavin. I think this is my fifth DLD. It's maybe my fourth, maybe my fifth. And when my first time here was probably 7 years ago, and it was right when we had first started Area Code, which is a game development company out of New York. And it was sort of one of the first times I was exposed to this many other people who were, as we were at that time, right at the edge of trying to feel out some dark space where nothing was quite built yet. And I've been coming on and off for years after that. During those years, we built up Area Code into a sort of game development company of some size, and we ended up selling it a year ago this week to Zynga, so that's now Zynga New York. In that last year, I've been advising and consulting and teaching and doing a little bit of angel investing, and sort of figuring out what happens next, and this is an excellent place to do that. It's a really interesting thing that's happening now. You really see the kind of gravity that these cities are exerting for startups. So just here at DLD, there's probably a dozen startups, from New York and from Berlin. Neither one of which would have been considered a great city for startups maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I think it's really interesting because I think part of what it reflects is the kinds of businesses that are being built. And the kinds of businesses that are being built are no longer about the internet itself. It's not about search engines. It's not about e-commerce. They're more actually about people and the kind of what happens when people are in density and how to actually think about how people interact with people in the real world and using technology to facilitate that. And that kind of knowledge and skills and information dwells actually less in the depopulated Silicon Valleys of the world and more in places where people are already in dense concentration with other strangers. There's a reason that location-based services are happening in cities that are filled with people and filled with restaurants and filled with places that are actually local businesses to shop, and that they're not coming out of strip mall country. And I think that the fact that startups are happening there really reflects a shift in the types of startups that we're seeing, and it's kind of beautiful and kind of amazing. And the ways that these new businesses are transforming even what those cities mean is just so beautiful to watch and to some degree to be a part of. The great thing about cities is the great thing about people, which is that each one is unique and has its own set of circumstances and its own history and its own sort of potential and possibility. The most interesting of those to me is GenSpace, which are a couple people who are deeply, deeply involved in bio and genetics and who arguably could have made a perfectly good living, coming up with new pills for impotence, at some big pharmaceutical company, and who instead are focused in this totally fucked up building in the middle of Brooklyn in actually producing a lab not to make anything in a way except for knowledge, and to actually sort of bring Brooklyn up to speed in terms of the revolution that's coming, in terms of bio and biopunk and so on. And because the bottom line there for them is so low, because they're not taking on a Series A investment and because they're not trying to scale, they're just trying to grow. And I mean really grow the way like plants grow, not the way like companies grow. There's a lot of really beautiful stuff like that happening. For me, that's the one that's the furthest at the edge. But there's that kind of energy is really you can find that now in ways that you couldn't find it even a few years ago.